My mom ain't here. My mama was sacrificed. His son, out in Hollywood, a lot of people come up missing. Never killed nobody, right? I'm the pussy that never killed nobody, right? But that means I can say whatever I want.
I just lost my wife to cancer and was with her for 15 years. So I was just telling Trey, man, I said it comes to the point where my wife was battling for 8 years. She got diagnosed. So for 8 years, I had to balance creativity, okay?
These years ago, Kanye knows what happened to his mother. I wish he would tell the truth about it. And now he's saying my mother was sacrificed.
Two-time nightly and matinee.
Do it again. I could never. It was the hardest work I've ever done in my life. Now here's what's the kicker about it, right? And I ain't gonna name some names. It was some very big black actors were hearing them dailies come, man, I hear TK Carter's, man, he's. So now the comedy dude who you thought was comedy, always serious actor too, now he gets the opportunity to go to another level. And this is where I say, if your preparation is together, anybody can give you any project or script and
you think in her death. I think the autopsy speaks for itself, period. Larry, if I can jump in here for 1 second, one of the things that I wanted to address here today is you can say things about me, I can say things about you, and people can say things about each other out on the street. But Dr. Adams is a physician, and because he's a physician, he's in a position where he is not able to comment on any care or any discussions that he's had with any of his patients, including Dr. West.
Her nurse wasn't there. Her nurse was gone to a baby shower rather than taking care of his aunt. This lady shouldn't be dead. All you had to do is sit her up. And every nurse on the planet knows that. Her caregivers gave her, 20 Vicodin tabs in less than 20 hours.
When Kanye West starts talking about sacrifices, missing people, and Hollywood secrets, the internet knows to brace itself. But this time, the timing is what has everyone unsettled. Just days after comedian and actor TK Carter was found dead alone in his home during a welfare check, Kanye reignited long-simmering fears about what really happens to celebrities who refuse to play along. The police say there was no foul play, but online detectives aren't buying it, especially considering TK had reportedly been speaking out about industry exploitation right before his death. Add Kanye's history of hinting that his own mother was sacrificed, and suddenly this isn't just another tragic celebrity loss. It's a story about silence, survival, and what happens when people start telling uncomfortable truths in an industry that doesn't forgive that easily. The news didn't land quietly. It hit with a thud that made people stop scrolling. TK Carter, a familiar face from decades of television and film, was found dead alone in his home during a welfare check, and almost immediately the story felt off. Not because the police rushed to call it suspicious. They didn't, but because the circumstances left too many gaps for a public that has seen this pattern before. A welfare check. No public medical emergency. No long, drawn-out illness announced ahead of time. Just silence, then headlines. Within hours, social media was buzzing with the same uneasy questions. Why was a man with decades in the industry found alone like that? And why now? What made the timing even harder to ignore was what people claimed TK had been doing right before his death. According to chatter circulating online, he wasn't just laying low or enjoying retirement. He was allegedly speaking out, venting frustrations, and hinting at uncomfortable truths about the industry he'd survived for so long. That's when the skepticism kicked in. Because every time a celebrity dies suddenly after pulling back the curtain, even a little, the internet doesn't just mourn, it investigates. And this time, people weren't just sad, they were suspicious. Fans and commentators started replaying the details over and over, trying to make them add up. A welfare check means someone was worried enough to call it in. Worried about what? Why hadn't anyone heard from him? Why did this happen so quietly for someone whose work touched so many iconic shows? And then there was the age factor. TK wasn't some frail elder the public had been bracing to lose. He was still sharp in people's minds, still respected, still relevant enough that his death felt abrupt rather than inevitable. As the questions stacked up, the story took on a darker tone, not because of confirmed facts, but because of history. Hollywood has a long memory when it comes to sudden losses, and audiences have learned not to ignore coincidences, especially when they pile up this neatly. No one was making accusations, at least not out loud, but the silence around the details spoke loudly enough. And in that silence, suspicion found room to grow. Kanye West doesn't enter stories like this as a reliable narrator. He enters as a disruptor. For years, he's been the uncomfortable variable in Hollywood conversations. The one who says things everyone else avoids, sometimes recklessly, sometimes incoherently, but often just clearly enough to make people uneasy. His history of explosive claims about the industry has trained audiences to roll their eyes first and listen second. Yet what keeps pulling people back in is that certain themes never change. Control, silence, sacrifice, people going missing socially, financially, creatively after stepping out of line. Kanye's words often sound wild in isolation, but over time, listeners have started noticing patterns forming beneath the chaos. And when he hints, repeatedly, that success in Hollywood comes with a cost most people never see, it lands differently in the wake of another sudden death. That's why his past comments about sacrifice refuse to stay buried. Kanye has never fully explained what he means, and that vagueness is exactly what makes it linger. He's alluded to losing his mother as the price of success, hinted at deals he regrets, and spoken about power structures that punish people who won't comply. No timelines, no names spelled out cleanly, just fragments. And now, with TK Carter's death entering the conversation, people aren't necessarily taking Kanye at his word, but they're no longer dismissing him outright either. He becomes the catalyst for suspicion, not the source of truth, the spark that reminds people to look twice at stories they'd normally accept at face value. To understand why TK's name hit so hard in this moment, you have to rewind to when the industry first saw his depth. For many, that moment was The Corner, where TK played Gary McCullough, a once stable family man whose life unravels under the weight of addiction. The role wasn't flashy or glamorous. It was raw, uncomfortable, and devastatingly real. What audiences didn't fully realize at the time was that TK wasn't just acting out that pain. He understood it intimately. His performance felt lived in because it was every relapse, every quiet moment of shame, every flicker of hope felt authentic in a way you can't fake, and critics praised him for it. But that authenticity came at a cost. TK later spoke about how deeply he had to immerse himself in the role, how he carried Gary with him long after the cameras stopped rolling. He wasn't drawing from imagination alone. He was revisiting personal trauma, family loss, and battles he believed he had already survived. The industry celebrated the result, applauded the realism, and handed out praise for the finished product. What it didn't do was step in to protect the man who bled on screen to make it possible. Without ever saying it outright, the imbalance became obvious. TK's pain became part of the product. His lived experience added texture, credibility, and emotional weight to the story, and that made the show a success. Producers leaned into that realism, knowing audiences respond to truth, even when that truth is someone else's suffering. Yet once the awards buzz faded and the project wrapped, TK was left largely on his own. The acclaim didn't translate into stability, security, or momentum. It translated into being known for one kind of role, one kind of darkness, while the system moved on to the next story. This is where the story slows down, because TK's life off-screen was never simple. Addiction wasn't a storyline for him. It was a recurring battle that had already taken people he loved. He lost his father to a drug-related death. He lost friends the same way. Addiction wasn't abstract. It lived in his family, his memories, and his grief. Even when he spoke about being on the other side of it, there was never a sense that the damage disappeared. It lingered, shaping how he saw himself and how others saw him. Layered on top of that were deep personal losses that compounded the weight he carried. Family members struggling, a brother lost, relationships strained by cycles of relapse and recovery. These weren't tabloid details. These were the quiet realities that made his performances resonate and his silences heavier. When someone like that pulls away from the spotlight, it doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it means exhaustion. And while TK's career slowed, the industry didn't. Other comedians turned actors from the same era watched their profiles rise, their paychecks grow, their brands expand into empires. They took lighter roles, safer roles, more profitable roles. Meanwhile, TK remained respected but sidelined, visible but not prioritized. At first, it could be chalked up to timing or choice. But after years passed, the question started to feel unavoidable. Was talent enough, or did survival in Hollywood require a kind of compromise TK wasn't willing or able to make? That contrast is what keeps people talking now. Not because TK didn't work hard, not because he lacked range, but because his trajectory suggests that authenticity doesn't always lead to reward, and integrity doesn't always come with protection. In an industry that celebrates transformation on screen but demands conformity behind the scenes, TK's story sits uncomfortably in the middle, unfinished, unresolved, and now, tragically, frozen in time. After years of steady work and quiet resilience, TK Carter didn't make a dramatic exit from Hollywood. He simply faded. There was no retirement announcement, no tell-all interview, no farewell tour. One day, he was still popping up in familiar places, and the next, his name stopped circulating. His final credited appearance came and went without much noise, and then the silence settled in. For fans who had grown up watching him, it felt less like a goodbye and more like someone slipping out the side door. Life moved on, the industry moved faster, and TK became one of those names people assumed was doing his own thing somewhere off camera. Until suddenly he wasn't. That silence shattered with the kind of headline no one expects to see attached to someone like him. TK Carter was found dead in his home during a welfare check, and the internet reacted almost instantly. Not with clarity, but with discomfort. A welfare check implies concern, absence, unanswered calls. It implies someone noticed something wasn't right. Fans struggled to reconcile that image with the man they remembered from their screens, and the disbelief poured out in real time. People weren't making statements as much as asking questions. How does someone so widely loved end up alone like that? Why did it take a welfare check? Why did this feel so sudden? Social media became a mirror for collective unease. Some mourned openly, revisiting his most memorable roles and sharing clips that reminded everyone just how much presence he had on screen. Others couldn't get past the circumstances. Comment after comment circled the same points: his age, his legacy, the quiet way he disappeared, and the uncomfortable feeling that this didn't add up. No accusations, just side eyes. No conclusions, just long pauses where answers should have been. It wasn't outrage. It was suspicion mixed with sadness, the kind that lingers. As TK's name trended again, another familiar name resurfaced alongside it: Kanye West. Old interviews began circulating, clipped and reposted, forcing people to re-examine words that once sounded unhinged or exaggerated. Kanye's past confessions about his mother's death, statements he's made in interviews over the years, were pulled back into the spotlight. He has claimed, repeatedly, that moving to Hollywood cost him his mother, framing her death as the ultimate price of success. Officially, her passing was attributed to complications from cosmetic surgery, and medical professionals involved have long disputed any wrongdoing. But Kanye's framing of the event has always existed in the gray space between grief, guilt, and something more ominous. The controversy surrounding medical accountability never fully went away. Lawsuits, interviews, and public disputes followed, with different sides presenting conflicting narratives. Doctors denied negligence. Family members pushed back. Kanye oscillated between silence and raw confession. Nothing was definitively proven beyond the official reports, but the unresolved nature of it all kept the conversation alive. And now, in the context of yet another sudden death tied to someone who many believe refused to play the game, those old statements felt heavier than before. That weight grows when people revisit the pressure Kanye has publicly claimed to face. Over the years, he's spoken about being threatened, controlled, and institutionalized when he became too loud, too erratic, too honest. Text messages he's shared, warnings he's described, and the very real history of him being placed under psychiatric evaluation have all fed into a narrative that powerful systems don't always protect their stars. They manage them, silence them, medicate them, redirect them. Whether those claims reflect reality or perception is still debated, but the fear behind them resonates with audiences who've watched too many similar stories in the same way. This is where everything circles back to TK, not as a conspiracy theory, but as a question that refuses to go away. Was his death simply tragic timing, a quiet man with a heavy past who passed alone? Or does it fit into a pattern people are increasingly afraid to name, where those who resist exploitation, speak too openly, or refuse to conform slowly disappear until they're only discussed in hindsight? There are no confirmed answers, no leaked reports, no smoking gun, just parallels that feel uncomfortable to ignore. And that's where the story leaves us, sitting in uncertainty. No proof of wrongdoing, no official cause that points beyond tragedy, but also no sense of closure. Too many careers stalled the same way. Too many voices quieted after moments of resistance. Too many deaths that feel abrupt, lonely, and poorly explained. Maybe it's coincidence. Maybe it's not. What's clear is that stories like this don't end cleanly, and the discomfort they leave behind says more about the industry and what we're willing to accept than any headline ever could.